The settlement of Port Exos had never been kind to its people. Gray buildings hunched together like rotten teeth, their surfaces streaked with decades of mineral dust that no amount of scrubbing could ever shift. The air itself felt gritty, as though one inhaled not oxygen, but powdered stone. It seeped into food, into clothes, even into dreams. And every breath was a reminder of the mines that kept the colony barely alive. Aidan Mercer walked those streets at dusk, boots heavy with exhaustion, the weight of the day's labor still dragging on his shoulders. His mustard-colored jumpsuit bore new stains of sweat and grime layered over old ones, and the dull clank of his reinforced knee pads echoed in the narrow alleyways. His broad frame fit the part of a miner, but the precision in his stride, the way his eyes scanned corners even when tired, betrayed a different kind of past. He carried a dented container. In one hand, the remnants of the mess hall's protein stew sloshing inside. The cook swore it was based on Earth recipes, but to Aidan, it tasted like cardboard drowned in brine. Still, it filled the belly. Waste was a luxury men like him couldn't afford, and though he didn't want the rest, he knew someone or something Dash would dot at. The corner, he spotted the communal feeder bowl. It sat tucked between rusted piping and a cracked wall, a dented metal container, where colonists sometimes left scraps for the creatures that prowled the edges of settlement life. They were tough little scavengers, born of Port Exos' harshness, and Aidan respected them for it. Survivors, just like him. Kneeling, he scraped out the stew, watching it fall with a wet plop among other scraps. Better than throwing it away, he muttered, straightening with a weary groan. That was when he heard it. A soft shuffling, too deliberate to be the skitter of pests. Then the faint cadence of whispered words, sharp and musical in a language unfamiliar to him. Instinct tugged his hand toward the utility knife on his belt, body bracing as though an ambush might spring from the shadows. He turned slowly, ready for trouble. Instead, he froze. 3 figures hovered near the feeder bowl. Small, thin, their bright blue skin stark against the gray world around them. White hair hung in tangled mats down their shoulders, dulled by the same dust that covered everything in Port Exos. Large eyes round, luminous, and filled with a hunger that was more than physical stared back at him. They were unmistakably young, children by their stature, if not their exact species. The tallest barely reached his chest. All 3 crouched over the scraps in the feeder, hands darting quickly, desperate to snatch whatever they could before. It was gone. You don't need to eat that, Aidan said softly. The smallest flinched at the sound, retreating behind the others with a fearful squeak. The tallest stepped forward, placing herself between him and the little ones with a protective fierceness that was too old for her frame. Her voice, when it came, was halting but steady. We not steal, just hungry. Something twisted hard in Aidan's chest. In all his years drifting from one frontier station to another, he had seen desperation miners broken by debts, drifters begging for a berth, children with hollow eyes, but never children eating from a bowl meant for strays. That crossed a line he didn't even know he had drawn. You're not in trouble, he said, crouching low to make himself smaller, less threatening. He let his hand fall away from his knife. But that food isn't good enough for you. Where are your parents? The 3 exchanged glances, a silent conversation that passed between them in flickers of expression and minute gestures. Finally, the tallest shook her head. No parents, just us. Aidan exhaled slowly, dragging a rough hand over the stubble on his jaw. He wasn't built for this. He was a miner, a soldier before that, not a caretaker. But walking away wasn't an option. He studied their gaunt faces, the threadbare patches of their cotton dresses, the wary determination in their too large eyes. The settlement would chew them up and spit them out without hesitation. I'm Aidan, he said at last, offering a small, crooked smile. "What are your names?" The tallest hesitated, then straightened as though introducing royalty. "I am Mary. These are Elia and C." She gestured to the middle and the smallest, who clung to her arms with quiet trust. "Well, Neri, Elia at C," Aiden said carefully. "How about we find you something real to eat? Maybe some clean clothes, too?" At the mention of food, all three pairs of eyes widened, but suspicion quickly returned. Neri tilted her head, narrowing her gaze. "Why help? What you want?" Aiden's smile faded into something solemn. "Because you're kids, and kids shouldn't eat from animal bowls. That's it. No strings." He rose slowly, gesturing toward the main street. "There's a clothing shop not far from here. After that, we'll see about dinner." The three conferred in their strange tongue, soft clicks and lilting vowels tumbling quickly between them. At last, Neri turned back, chin high though her voice trembled. "We go with you. But we run if bad things." Aiden nodded once, solemn. "That's fair. I'd do the same." And as he led them out of the alley, dust swirling in the dying light, Aiden Mercer felt a pull deep in his chest. A sense that his life, once little more than grit and labor, had just changed forever. The bell above the door gave a soft chime as Aiden pushed it open, ushering the three girls inside. The shop was called Stellar Threads, though to him it looked more like a boutique than anything a miner would step into willingly. Clean light spilled across polished floors, catching on racks of carefully arranged garments tailored for species from half a dozen worlds. The air smelled faintly of lavender oils, a stark contrast to the sour dust and metal tang outside. Aiden, still in his sweat-stained jumpsuit, felt grimly out of place. The girls clung to him at first, their bare feet leaving faint prints on the immaculate floor. Their wide eyes darted between the bright fabric silks and synthetics in shimmering hues like animals unused to safety. They looked too fragile here, as though one wrong move might shatter the illusion of normalcy this shop seemed to hold. "Hello? Anyone here?" Aiden called, his voice rough from the mines. A curtain at the back swayed, and she stepped through. Blue-skinned, white-haired like the girls, but taller, poised, her presence carrying the quiet gravity of someone who knew exactly where she belonged. She wore a fitted indigo dress, lined with silver threads that caught the light with each graceful stride. Long purple hair spilled down her shoulders, and when her violet eyes landed on the children, her composure cracked. Surprise widened them, then softened them with something like recognition. "Can I help you?" she asked. Her voice was melodic. Words carried on a cadence that reminded Aiden of music played softly in another room. Aiden cleared his throat. "These girls, they need clothes, and maybe a bath." Found them out in the alleys, eating out of a feeder bowl. The woman's gaze shifted to the three children. They shrank back at first, but when she knelt to their level and spoke in their native tongue, a run of clicks and flowing vowels, they answered at once, voices tumbling out in relief. The smallest, C, pressed herself against the woman's shoulder, trusting her instantly. Her eyes flicked back to Aiden. "My name is Lena. They say you gave them food, that you offered to help them." Aiden shrugged, suddenly uncomfortable. Under the weight of her steady gaze, seemed like the right thing to do. "In Port Exos," Lena replied, rising with the easy grace of a dancer. "The right thing is rarely done without an expectation of reward." "What do you want in return, human?" "Nothing." His answer was immediate, and it surprised even him with its firmness. "They're kids. They needed help. That's all." Something shifted in her expression, as though she hadn't expected the answer. The suspicion faded, leaving behind a glimmer of something warmer. "Very well," she said softly. "Come, let's see what can be done." She led the children through the curtain into the washroom, her hand resting protectively on Neri's back. Aiden stayed in the front, wandering awkwardly among the racks. He brushed calloused fingers across fabrics, finer than anything he'd ever worn, feeling like a bull loose in a glass shop. The faint sounds of running water reached his ears, followed by the bubbling laughter of children, laughter that sounded alien and heartbreakingly normal at the same time. Time stretched. Aiden found himself staring at a pair of work gloves displayed neatly on a shelf, the kind of thing a miner might actually use. He picked them up, weighed them in his hands, and thought about how strange this day had already become. He'd expected another weary trudge home, a shower, maybe sleep. Instead, he had 3 children trailing behind him, a shopkeeper questioning his motives, and a strange tightness in his chest he couldn't quite name. When Lena emerged again, she was different. Not in form, her hair still shimmered, her violet eyes still sharp, but in expression. She studied Aiden with something close to respect. Behind her, the 3 girls stepped out shyly, scrubbed clean, dressed in simple but fresh clothes that fit. Their white hair gleamed under the lights, their blue skin radiant now that it wasn't hidden beneath grime. They no longer looked like half-feral street waifs. They looked like someone. Aiden's lips pulled into a grin before he realized it. Well, look at you 3. Feeling better? Neri nodded, a hesitant smile tugging her mouth. Thank you, human Aiden. They can stay here tonight, Lena said, her hand resting lightly on C's shoulder. I have space above the shop. Her eyes searched his face. But I wonder, what do you intend to do with them after that? Aiden rubbed the back of his neck. Honestly, haven't thought that far. Food, clothes, safety, that's as far as I got. That honesty. Lena's lips curved into a small, unreadable smile. It is rare here. She stepped closer, close enough for Aiden to catch the faint floral scent of her hair. Close enough for her violet eyes to lock on his. You're not what I expected of a miner. Aiden shifted under her gaze, heat creeping up his neck. I'm just trying to do right by them. And perhaps, Lena murmured, almost to herself, there's more to you than you think. The girls laughed again, their voices spilling from behind her, but the air between Aiden and Lena had changed. Something taut, something dangerous, something new stretched in the space where suspicion had been. And Aiden, though he couldn't name it, felt that the simple choice to empty his leftovers into a feeder bowl had just bound him to a path far larger than himself. The streets of Port Exos always seemed darker after sundown, the dust-filled air, catching the faint glow of the neon strips and turning it into a haze that obscured more than it revealed. Aiden kept the 3 girls close as they left Stellar Threads. He felt their small hands clutching the fabric of his jumpsuit. Elia's shy grip at his elbow. C pressed almost against his leg. Lena walked beside him, her stride smooth, but he could feel the tension in her body like a drawn bowstring. Every passerby's glance lingered too long. 3 clean, bright-eyed alien children in fresh clothes following a human miner was a sight no one in Port Exos could ignore. They hadn't gone far when Aiden felt it, the subtle hush that fell across a street when danger enters. His instincts, honed long before the mines, sparked alive. He slowed his steps, scanning. 3 figures blocked the alley mouth ahead, tall and broad-shouldered, their ridged foreheads and mottled green skin catching the dim light. Vrex mercenaries, bounty hunters. Lena's breath caught, and she shifted closer, her hand brushing against Aiden's arm as if to steady herself. The girls froze, wide-eyed, their new clothes suddenly looking like a cruel joke. The leader of the trio stepped forward, reptilian eyes narrowing. He spoke in a gravelly rumble. We heard whispers, blue-skinned runts. Thought the Valyrian line was ash, but seems fate left scraps. His hand rested casually on the disruptor pistol at his hip, Aiden slid a step in front of Lena and the girls. "Evening," he said, voice steady, though his pulse hammered. "Shops are closed. You'll have to come back tomorrow." The mercenary's gaze flicked over him with disdain. A human. Odd company for an Azaran. Lena's voice, smooth as silk, slipped in before Aiden could speak. "Not odd," she said, stepping against his side with calculated ease. "Essential. Miners are sturdy companions. Useful protection. And other things." Her hand traced deliberately across Aiden's chest, and though heat climbed up his neck, he understood. She was building a cover story, a mask to throw off. Suspicion. The mercenary sneered, but his companions chuckled. "Exotic tastes," one muttered. "Very," Lena purred, her violet eyes daring them to question her further. "Now, unless you're here to shop for silks, and somehow I doubt, you're interrupting my evening." The leader ignored the bait. He stepped closer, looming, his scaled skin gleaming under the flickering neon. "We're looking for 3 young Azarans. Blue skin, white hair. Have you seen any?" Lena tilted her head, her smile sharp. "Only? Azuran here is me. Unless you count miners who play off-world fantasies in their heads." Aiden's lips twitched into a cocky grin. "And she doesn't share." For a moment, silence hung between them, thick as the dust in the air. Then the mercenary's smile dropped, and his voice hardened. "Check upstairs." One of his men started forward. Aiden moved instantly, stepping into his path. "That's private property," he said, steel in his tone. His hand hovered near the knife at his belt. It was all the excuse they needed. The leader drew his disruptor with a hiss of energy and fired. Aiden shoved Lena aside and dove, the bolt searing past, and shattering a display case. He rolled, knife flicking open with a metallic snick, its monomolecular edge catching the light. Years of tunnel collapses, cave-ins, and survival drills sharpened his reflexes. He surged up, slamming his shoulder into the merc's gut, driving him back into a rack of clothes. Fabric toppled in a cascade as Aiden's blade flashed, cutting across the alien's scaled hand. The disruptor clattered to the ground with a howl of pain. Another merc raised his weapon, but Lena was already moving. Her hand closed around a heavy metal bust on display, a mannequin head polished to a shine. She hurled it with surprising strength. It smashed into the merc's temple, sending him staggering sideways. Bolts ripped across the shop as the third fired wild. Aiden yanked Lena down behind a counter as splinters of wood and fabric flew overhead. The children's terrified cries carried from the back, and Lena's violet eyes went wide. "The girls, stay down." Aiden barked, vaulting over the counter. The wounded leader was rising, green blood dripping. Aiden kicked the disruptor across the floor toward Lena, then turned back with a growl. Bad move. The fight was brutal, fast. Aiden ducked a wild swing, driving his blade into the gaps of natural armor. He moved with precision, targeting joints, using momentum. Every strike economical. The second merc recovered and lunged, but Aiden slid beneath his grasp, cutting low, dropping him with a cry. The third took aim at Aiden's exposed back. The disruptor cracked, but it wasn't the mercenary firing. Lena stood steady, both hands on the weapon Aiden had kicked her. Way. The shot drilled the alien in the shoulder, dropping him to the floor in a smoking heap. In seconds, the shop was a ruin of shattered displays, scorched walls, and groaning mercenaries. Aiden stood in the center, chest heaving, a shallow cut bleeding down his cheek. He wiped the blade clean before folding it away, his eyes locking on Lena. "Are you hurt?" She shook her head, still holding the disruptor, her gaze fixed on him with something close to astonishment. "Where did you learn to fight like that?" "Earth Special Forces," he said shortly, retrieving the children from the hidden alcove Lena showed him. Before the mines. Her eyes lingered, studying him as though seeing him anew. But before she could answer, the wail of a distant siren pierced the night. Security or worse drawn by the noise. Aiden pulled Neri into his arms, Tsi clinging to his leg. "We can't stay," he said grimly. "More will come." Lena's hand tightened on the disruptor, her violet eyes flashing with resolve. "Then we run together." The shuttle rattled like it had been welded together from scrap, its hull groaning as it lifted away from Port Exos. Aiden sat wedged into a cramped maintenance alcove, one arm braced against the bulkhead, the other wrapped around Elia to keep her steady. Across from him, Neri clutched Tsi close, their luminous eyes wide with a mixture of fear and wonder. They had never left Port Exos before. For them, the trembling ascent was both terrifying and miraculous. Lena sat beside Aiden, her violet eyes darting between the girls and the sealed hatch. She hadn't let go of the disruptor she'd salvaged from the shop. Even now, with their escape underway, her hand rested on it as though she expected mercenaries to come bursting through the bulkhead. Aiden glanced at her, caught the sharp profile of her face lit by the warning lights, and felt a strange warmth cut through his exhaustion. Her cool skin had pressed against his not an hour ago, a kiss for cover that had become something else. The memory lingered in the air between them like static dot. The shuttle shuddered, then leveled out, engines humming as it pushed free of atmosphere. The cabin lighting flickered to a steady glow. From the narrow viewport, Aiden saw the dust shrouded world shrinking away, replaced by the endless sweep of stars. For the first time in years, he felt distance from Port Exos, like stepping out of a mine tunnel into open sky. "Where are we going?" Neri asked, her voice steady despite her age. "Helios." "Station," Aiden answered. "Trade hub. Crowded enough we can disappear." Lena's lips tightened. Disappear? With 3 girls carrying Valyrian crests? If anyone recognizes them, Helios will be more dangerous than Exos. The words hit hard. He turned to her. "You knew about that," he said quietly. "Back in the shop. That's why you insisted they stay with you." Her gaze met his, unflinching. "I saw the markings when I bathed them. You understand what it means?" "Royal blood," Aiden muttered. "Lost house. Massacred, if the stories are true." "Not massacred," Neri said, her chin lifting with a dignity that startled him. "Survivors." The silence that followed was heavy. Lena looked at the girl, eyes soft with something like sorrow. Aiden shifted uncomfortably. He wasn't built for royal politics. He was a miner, a soldier before that. But the weight of what? He'd stumbled into pressed down like a new gravity. The shuttle docked with a metallic clang. The hatch hissed open, spilling the stale air of Helios into the cabin. Aiden gathered the girls close, guiding them into the flow of workers and traders. Disembarking. The station stretched above them like a metal spiderweb, vast docking arms curving inward toward a central hub glowing with artificial daylight. The scent of oil and spice mingled in the corridors, voices of a dozen languages colliding in the air. The group moved quickly, following Aiden's lead. He knew Helios. Years ago, he'd worked a contract here in maintenance. He still remembered shortcuts through service tunnels, the quiet sectors where security patrols rarely wandered. Lena kept the younger girls tight to her side, while Neri matched Aiden's stride, her gaze sharp and searching. They reached a narrow residential district and slipped into a modest hostel. The proprietor barely glanced at them, more interested in the credits Aiden dropped on the counter. Inside the small room, 2 beds and a narrow washroom waited. The girls collapsed together on one, whispering in their musical tongue. Aiden sat heavily on the other, running a hand through his dark hair. "Safe for now," he said. "Not for long, Lena replied. She moved to the window, peering out at the station's glowing arteries. The bounty on them, it would tempt saints. Before Aiden could answer, a knock rattled the door. Every instinct in his body went taut. He motioned Lena back, pulled his knife from its sheath, and crept to the viewer. What he saw made him pause. An older alien stood there, leathery skin weathered by years, white hair bristling like a halo. His clothing was practical, worn, but well-maintained, the attire of someone who knew ships. His amber eyes peered patiently into the viewer. Who is it? Lena whispered. Disruptor raised. I don't know, Aiden murmured. Captain, maybe. Doesn't look armed. He slid the door open a crack. Help you? The old alien's eyes crinkled. Name's T.K. Voss, and unless I'm mistaken, you're harboring 3 princesses of House Valyrian. Behind Aiden, Neri gasped. She pushed past him, staring at the old man with trembling recognition. Captain Voss? The stern lines of his face softened instantly. Princess Nirenthel, he said, bowing his head, you've grown. Aiden tightened his grip on the knife, suspicion bristling. You know him? He was Mother's pilot, Neri explained breathlessly. Trusted, for secret journeys. Voss nodded gravely. 30 years I served House Valyrian. And since the coup, I've searched, hoped. Rumors said the bloodline was gone. But seeing you here alive, it means everything. His amber eyes flicked to Aiden and Lena. You've chosen dangerous allies, but perhaps the right ones. They. Old Captain's voice dropped lower. Listen to me carefully. Helios won't be safe for long. The usurpers have ears everywhere. They've doubled the bounty since you left Exos. If you want to survive, you need to leave. Tonight. Aiden's jaw tightened. Leave where? Voss's gaze sharpened. To the vault your mother prepared. You know of it, Princess? Neri nodded slowly. Level 3, Section D behind Tresian Bank. Mother told me. The old pilot's mouth curved faintly. Then we still have a chance. The evidence there can expose Morton's treachery to the whole sector. Lena's eyes narrowed. Suspicion's still alive. Why now? Why reveal yourself only once we reached Helios? Because now I am certain, Moss replied. And because if we delay any longer, the girls won't live to see another sunrise. Aiden glanced at Lena, and at the 3 children huddled together. He felt the weight of their trust, heavier than any ore he'd ever hauled from the mines. Slowly, he lowered his knife. All right, he said. But if this is a trap, then you'll kill me, Moss finished, nodding solemnly. And I would expect nothing less. The old captain extended his hand. Do we have an accord, Mr. Mercer? Aiden stared at it, then clasped it firmly. For the first time, the miner's calloused hand joined with the loyalists. And just like that, their path veered toward a secret vault that might change the fate of a people. The Tresian Bank rose like a monument of wealth in the center of Helios. Station's financial district, its marble facade and gleaming glass in alien sight. Amid the steel corridors and grease-stained bulkheads of the lower levels, Aiden felt the stairs before they entered. Dockhands and clerks, traders and financiers, everyone in this sector carried themselves differently, with the tightness of people who dealt in power rather than survival. He kept his shoulders squared, guiding the girls close, while Voss led them to a discreet side entrance marked private clients. Only the old pilot moved with the ease of someone who knew these halls far too well. Producing a maintenance badge, he swiped it across the panel. The door clicked open. Beyond lay a narrow corridor ending in a sealed elevator, its frame inlaid with security glyphs. This is where you lead, Princess, Moss said softly. Neri stepped forward without hesitation. Her chin lifted like a child, imitating her mother's grace. She pressed her small hand against the scanner. Blue light washed over her skin, humming in response. Genetic verification accepted, the computer intoned. Voice code required. Mary spoke in a series of ancient syllables, her voice steady despite the tremor in her hands. The language was strange to Aiden's ear, musical but heavy with formality. The elevator doors slid open with a hydraulic sigh. Inside, the air changed. Cool, sterile, carrying the faint tang of ozone. The walls gleamed with polished alloy, and when the doors closed behind them, the hum of the station seemed to vanish. Aiden shifted uncomfortably, knife hand itching. He trusted maintenance shafts and back alleys, not vaults lined with secrets. The elevator descended, deeper than seemed possible inside the station structure. When it stopped, the doors opened onto a circular chamber bathed in soft blue light. Storage compartments lined the curved walls, each sealed with intricate locks. In the center rose a pedestal. As they entered, it flared to life, projecting a three-dimensional image. A woman appeared elegant, regal, her posture commanding even in hologram. Her skin was the same radiant blue as the children, her hair a flowing cascade of silver white. The resemblance to Neri, Elia, and C was unmistakable. "My daughters," the figure said, her voice rich with warmth. "If you see this, then the worst has come to pass." C gasped and reached forward, but Lena caught her gently, whispering, "It's only a recording." Neri stepped closer, her small hands curling into fists. "We are here, Mother," she whispered. The hologram continued, oblivious. "The evidence contained here will reveal the architect of our family's destruction. High Chancellor Morton betrayed us, orchestrating the coup to seize control of the Outer Rim mines. Proof of his treachery is stored in these systems. Use it to reclaim what is rightfully ours. And remember," her voice softened, her gaze seeming to rest on them as if alive, "find happiness where you can. That is my final wish for you." The projection flickered and faded. Silence pressed in. Aiden moved first, stepping to the console and slotting a data crystal. His fingers, rough from years of mining, danced with surprising precision across the holographic interface. Streams of records flowed: financial transactions, encrypted orders, assassination contracts. Enough to damn Morton 1,000 times over. "Got it," he said, slipping the crystal into his pocket. "Now let's—" "Too late?" The voice slithered from the doorway. They turned. Morton himself stood framed in the glow of the vault entrance. His skin was pale, almost icy, stretched tight across sharp bones. His hair, stark white, was pulled back into a severe knot. 4 guards flanked him, disruptors drawn. "Captain Voss," Morton drawled, his violet eyes gleaming with cruel satisfaction. "Still clinging to lost loyalties, I see. And what a company you've chosen: an old traitor, a shopkeeper, and a human miner pretending to be more than dirt. All protecting brats who should have been dust." Aiden's knife was already in his hand. He edged slightly forward, muscles coiled. "You won't touch them," he said. Morton laughed, a hollow sound. "Brave words from a primitive. Hand over the data, and I might grant you a merciful death." "You're too late," Lena cut in, her voice cold. "The evidence is already out. Station-wide broadcast. Coalition channels. Every news feed. It was a bluff." Aiden knew it. Morton didn't. His smug expression faltered, rage searing across his features. "Kill them all. No witnesses." The chamber erupted in violence. Aiden lunged as the first guard fired, the energy bolt grazing past his ear. He slammed into the armored figure, driving his knife between plates with lethal precision. The guard crumpled. Lena's disruptor spat blue light, dropping another. The third fired wild, forcing Voss to shove the children behind a storage pod. He grabbed a fallen weapon with surprising speed for his age, firing into the melee. Morton raised his ornate pistol, not at Aiden, not at Lena, but at the girls. "I cannot have the throne," he snarled. "Then no one will." Aiden didn't think. He threw himself into the line of fire. The blast caught him high in the shoulder, spinning him with the force. Pain flared white-hot, but he stayed upright, momentum carrying him as he hurled his knife. The blade buried deep in Morton's arm, tearing the pistol from his grasp. Lena's shot followed, precise and merciless, striking down the last guard. Smoke and ozone filled the chamber. Morton collapsed, clutching his bleeding arm. Eyes blazing with hatred. Voss trained the recovered disruptor on him. For 30 years of loyal service, this is justice long overdue. "Wait," Aries' voice cut through, sharp with authority. She stepped forward, chin high, her small frame suddenly regal. "No, he faces trial, as Mother would have wanted." Even Voss hesitated before nodding slowly. "As you wish, Your Highness." Aiden sagged against the console, teeth gritted, against the pain burning through his shoulder. Lena was there instantly, tearing fabric to staunch the wound. "Stupid, brave human," she whispered, eyes glistening. "What were you thinking?" "Wasn't," he rasped. "Just reacted." "You saved them?" Her hand lingered on his chest, cool and steady. "You took a blast meant for children you barely know." "Our children," he murmured before he realized what he'd said. Lena's eyes widened, something tender and dangerous flickering there. Before either could speak, alarms wailed. Security would be here any moment. Voss snapped restraints on Morton, hauling him up. "We must go, now." Aiden forced himself to stand, the girls crowding close, Neri's small hand slipping into his. He squeezed it gently, drawing strength. They left the vault together, carrying evidence, a prisoner, and a bond forged in fire. Whatever waited beyond Helios Station, nothing would ever be the same again. The Starlight Wanderer broke free of Helios Station with a low vibration that shivered through its hull. The moment the docking clamps released, Captain Voss poured power into the engines, and the ship surged outward, leaving behind the glimmering spiderweb of the station's arms. The alarm still echoed in Aiden's head, though they were fading now, replaced by the steady thrum of hyperspace drives charging. He sat in the passenger compartment, his shirt ripped open at the shoulder, a burn mark seared black across his skin. Lena knelt beside him, her cool hands working carefully with the ship's medkit. The antiseptic stung, but her touch steadied him, the delicate press of her fingers, carrying more comfort than any field dressing he'd endured in his soldiering. "Days. You'll live," she said at last, binding the wound with smooth efficiency. "You'll have a scar, but it could have been far worse." "Worth it," Aiden muttered, his eyes drawn across the cabin. The girls sat huddled together on a bench, Elia and C leaning against Neri's shoulders. They looked exhausted, but their eyes stayed fixed on him, as if afraid he might vanish. Lena followed his gaze, and her violet eyes softened. "They were right, you know. You didn't just save them. You claimed them." He frowned. "Claimed?" Before she could answer, Voss strode in from the cockpit, Morton shackled at his side, a permanent sneer on his pale face. The captain carried a small crystalline device, one of the storage units from the vault. He set it on the table between them. There was more in that chamber than evidence, Voss said gravely. The Valerian line planned for this. He pressed a command, and the device bloomed with blue light. A second hologram appeared, this time not the Queen's farewell, but a legal recording, stamped with the insignia of the Azuran High Council. Words scrolled in formal glyphs, while a clear voice read them aloud in both Azuran dialect and standard. In the event of regicide and the survival of heirs, guardianship is to be vested in the regent, named by House Valerian. Should none of noble blood remain, The regent shall be chosen from one who has proven loyalty through action, not lineage. The light shifted. A name flared across the projection. Aiden Mercer. The words hit harder than the disruptor blast. Aiden blinked, sure he had misheard. What? Voss's amber eyes met his. Guardian Regent. The Queen named you protector. Of the royal line. That's insane, Aiden said, shaking his head. I'm a miner. A soldier before that. I know. You are exactly what they need, Lena cut in, her voice firm. Someone without political ties. Someone who chose them with no thought of gain. That is why she named you. Neri stood, her small frame trembling, but her voice steady. She crossed the cabin and took his uninjured hand in both of hers. Mother trusted you, so do we. Elia and C followed, pressing close, their wide eyes shining with something more. Powerful than gratitude-faith. Aiden looked down at them, and at Lena, whose gaze burned with quiet conviction. The weight of it all pressed into his chest, but beneath the fear, something else bloomed. Purpose. Belonging. For the first time since he'd left Earth, since he'd buried comrades and traded uniforms for dust-stained jumpsuits, he wasn't just surviving. He was needed. He swallowed hard. Then I'll protect you. All of you, whatever it takes. Morton spat from his restraints, voice venomous. A human regent? The council will never allow it. They'll laugh you out of the chamber. Voss's reply was cold steel. They'll have no choice. The Queen's seal is law. The ship shuddered as the hyperspace jump engaged, stars stretching into luminous streaks before vanishing into the infinite dark. Lena leaned close, her cool hand brushing against his cheek. From miner to guardian regent, she murmured with a smile that carried both awe and affection. Quite a journey for a man who only wanted to feed strays. Aiden let out a breathless laugh, wincing at the pull in his shoulder. Best decision I ever made. The three girls crowded closer. Lena's hand slipped into his, and for the first time in years, Aiden Mercer felt something like home, not in walls or earth, but in the people around him. As the Starlight Wanderer carried them toward New Azura, he knew one truth with absolute certainty. His solitary life had ended the moment he turned around in that alley. What waited ahead was dangerous, complicated, and impossibly vast. But he would face it, as he always had, with grit, with heart, and now with a family worth fighting for.